So what exactly happened yesterday with the Bears Stadium? We're going to kind of reset and go through everything so everybody can easily digest it, because it was a lot and everybody's still trying to sort it out. We're also going to talk about the Bears coaching staff. Taylor Dow joins us on the show for a long conversation. We got a good one for you here on this Friday. It's CHGO Bears. Welcome into the CHGO Bears Podcast, a Friday edition ahead of the NFL Combine. And yes, we're still talking a little stadium today. Not the whole show. We have a good conversation coming up with Taylor Dow, who we love talking to, and some of the coaching connections, specifically because she's down in Jacksonville. So you've that to look forward to coming up a little bit later on in the show. Adam Hoge and Greg Braggs Jr. here with you on Friday. We will take the weekend after this one and then talk to you next week in Indianapolis as one of our favorite weeks of the entire year, the NFL Combine. Looking forward to bringing you guys a bunch of coverage from down in Indy, a bunch of offseason stuff, free agency, obviously all the draft prospects. We're going to hear from Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson down there. It's going to be a busy week, and we love it. And Greg's going to sleep an average of 2.5 hours a night.
Yeah, looking forward to getting my last bit of sleep here these next couple days. But yeah, I mean, obviously, everyone knows over the last few years how big a fan I am of stadium shows. But I do feel like, the rubber has met the road in a lot of ways with Illinois, the Bears, and now Indiana as well. And obviously being able to go to City Hall in Hammond, Indiana, hear from the mayor himself there. You heard Governor Braun on with 670 The Score yesterday. Pritzker put out a statement. There was a lot of things that happened in the afternoon after we had already done our show. And, there was a lot of conversation about what was being said over the morning. And I felt like, honestly, to be quite honest with you, Hogue, I thought a lot of it was kind of underlined set towards you. And so I truly want to kind of reset the table, because if there's anything that's lazy when it comes to journalism, it's sensationalizing what people say. And so I do take exception to that, because I thought we were pretty clear over the last 4-5 episodes that we've done since Wednesday, kind of where we have stood, not just this week, but over the last few months and over the last few years.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Greg. I mean, look, I felt similar, but I've also kind of learned, especially in the last, 3-4 years, that, people that see reporting that they just don't like or they don't want to hear, they just completely dismiss it instead of listening to it. Okay. So I think that's just part of it. And that's okay. Like I've come to kind of accept that and look past that. But really all I wanted to do here is just so people understand, I've been working on this story for years now. Okay. There's a lot of information that I've had banked for months. If you go back in time, you can find an episode that we did where the first time I mentioned Indiana was in late May of last year. And it was in the context of, I think you're going to start hearing Indiana become part of this conversation. Not the Bears are moving to Indiana, not any of that, but sure enough, what ended up happening. So if you want to follow the breadcrumbs here a little bit, it's just, that is what it is. I'm just going to kind of brush it off. But I did want to use this opportunity today on today's show, Greg, to kind of go through what was actually said yesterday, and then also separate that, because we are doing a show where we voice our own opinions on some of these things too, and make sure there's a clear line in the sand between those two things, because I do think it's understandable that sometimes that gets confusing. Okay. So what did get a lot of attention yesterday, and I do feel like it was taken out of context in a much longer 20-minute conversation that I had on 670 The Score yesterday, was that I said that this Bears deal with Indiana is at the half-yard line. It is. But there's also there's two deals going on here simultaneously. There's the Bears deal with Illinois and there's the Bears deal with Indiana. And at the end of the day, they're going to choose one of them. But the actual deal with Indiana, with what happened yesterday, a 24-0 vote in a House committee, which almost never happens in politics between Republicans and Democrats, regardless of what the issue is, regardless of what the state is, especially in today's climate, with the Bears also releasing a statement at the same time, this inched towards the finish line in what this deal is ultimately going to look like. Now, it's not done. It is not a done deal. I said that multiple times yesterday too, and it doesn't mean that the Bears will ultimately take it. Illinois is still very much in play. And if you really listen to the 3 shows we did yesterday and the other hits I did, I was also on Jason Goff's podcast last night. I don't know if that's out yet or not, but there's that conversation that was repeated over and over and over and over again. And I kept actually bringing up what happened with the New England Patriots back in 1999, I think in every single hit I did, including on The Score. But there are some things here that you do need to follow the breadcrumbs and realize that this is a real thing, which is really all I've been trying to get across now for a couple months, that this is more than a bluff. Is it leverage? Absolutely. I've said that along the way too, but it is more of a bluff, and the Bears are actually considering moving to Indiana. Okay. Now, meanwhile, what I also think is important to understand, because there was a lot of finger pointing going on yesterday, and understandably so. And I'm not talking about the stuff on Twitter. I'm talking about between the state of Illinois and the Chicago Bears, right. Whether it was directly with some of the stuff the governor said on the record or just some of the stuff as information starts to circulate behind the scenes. The reality is, and this is important, the Bears and Illinois are actually not that far apart right now on these issues. They were making progress this week. And despite the actions that were taken and some of the way that this played out from late Wednesday night into Thursday morning, there are feelings, there are emotions, but the actual issues here at play, I do think the gap has closed on some of that. And I also think that, and maybe this was what the Bears were trying to accomplish, I don't know, have to hear that from them directly at some point. I think the reaction yesterday, whether calculated or not, trying to drum up that reaction, I think Pritzker saw some of the political danger of potentially losing the Bears too. So I think that but both sides, meanwhile, including today, because the governor's talked again today, both sides, I think, are trying to do some damage control here as well, based on how this all went down. Now, I'm going to pause there, because that is actually what was all the development yesterday and what we were trying to get across on these shows. There was more that you and I did in Hammond, because we went to the mayor's press conference in Hammond later in the day. We will get to that. But I also want to make this very clear, and then I'm going to let you go, Greg, because I know you want to make this clear too. So draw the line. That was the reporting. Here's my personal feelings on all this. I think Indiana's a massive mistake, and I don't think the Bears should go there. I think the stadium should be on the lakefront. I've always said that. I always think that. That's not realistic. That's not what's going to happen, and that part sucks. So between the two options that are now realistic, evidently Arlington Heights, the land the Bears own, and Indiana, I think Arlington Heights is the much better play, regardless of what the better deal is for the Bears. And I could actually expand on that later on in the show, and why I actually think Arlington Heights long-term will be the better deal. Even if in the short term on paper, as they try to put this all together, it sure looks like financially Indiana is giving you a better offer. Now, those are my actual personal feelings. So if anybody out there thinks I'm pushing for Indiana or think that should be happening, I don't want to see that. And I also want to mischaracterize what you've been saying, Greg, but I also don't think that's what you want, even though you live there.
Correct. I mean, it is, as I said yesterday, it's a mix of emotions. As a lifelong resident in Northwest Indiana, it's impossible for me to not think about the implications and the impact, having the historic franchise of the Bears in my area. And you're right. Over your reporting over the last year and especially over the last 2 months, I never believed you. You would write articles. I'm like, This is leverage, Hoge. Yesterday was the first time I crossed the threshold to understanding what you've been trying to get through my thick-headed skull. And so that's where maybe it, for maybe some that tuned into the breaking news show or whatever, kind of misconstrued how I felt from this perspective. And that's where I take exception, because I see a lot of conversation. If you're blaming, Pritzker in the state of Illinois and the government, then you're shilling for the Bears. And if you're blaming the Bears, for the mess up over the last 4 years, then you're shilling for the government. I personally want to make something clear, and that's, I'm not shilling for anyone but Bears fans. I don't care about any of this except for the Chicago Bears and our fans. That's always where I'm going to go to first, and that might be pretty meat-headed of me, but forgive me, I am the meatball of this program. I live and breathe Chicago sports. When they bury me, they're going to bury me in my Devin Hester jersey if I can still fit in it. So that, to me, is where I take exception. Would it have a huge impact on my life? I don't even know from a tax standpoint. Like my property tax will go up, but my property value might be even going. I don't really know about any of that. So that stuff's over my head. I just think about it from a fan standpoint, and obviously from my career standpoint, it would be very unique to have the Bears in my backyard. But maybe some of you out there would find this hard to believe, but I actually think about Bears fans first. And to your point, we've talked about this with Mark Carm ad nauseum over the last few years. We all would rather, if you took the Arlington Heights blueprints and put them, say you could put them anywhere, Chicago, Arlington, Hammond, I'd want it in Chicago. I'd want it right where it is on the lakefront. I love Soldier Field. Most people hate it. I love it, but that's because I know what I'm doing when I go there. I go there a lot. So I know what time I need to be there. I know the easiest places to park. I know the easiest places to sit. I know where to sneak into what section I want to get into to get you the best video shot of the touchdown. I know Soldier Field like the back of my hand, but not everybody's like that. So I understand that the Bears need a new stadium. When you walk into Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, you understand that the Bears need a state-of-the-art stadium. So with that being said, Arlington Heights and what they laid out to me and Mark Carman as we sat in the town hall meeting 4 years ago clearly was like, this is paradise. This is Bears paradise. I would love this. And there was so much opportunity for hotels, bars, maybe a sports book, residential. They even had canoes, tailgating, parking, a stadium. It all lays out so perfectly with the land they own in Arlington. And so now it's juxtaposed against what Hammond could do. And as I said yesterday, we still haven't seen a blueprint from Hammond and what they're going to do. The mayor yesterday is like, they can put it in my backyard. Well, they're not going to do that. So we need to see what you're going to present in Hammond before I even ever come across the line of saying, yeah, this is better than Arlington Heights. As it stands right now, to me, Arlington Heights, from a game day perspective, is better for Bears fans than anything else that's been presented. But I don't care about who's going to Taylor Swift concerts, personally. I don't care about all that. Now, that stuff might help the Bears organization. That might help the Bears on the field. So I take that into consideration. But at the end of the day, that's where my mind space is. And if I have to take a longer drive to Arlington Heights versus Hammond because it's better for me as a Bears fan, I'd take that over the selfish reasons of why it would be better for me personally in Northwest Indiana.
Yeah, no, I think that's all well said. I think the other thing I want to talk about, because this is what everybody wants to know, like, whatever the semantics are that everybody's arguing, what is the actual timeline here, right? Like, so, and we can talk about, I know it's our headline on the show today, who's to blame. And I've been very clear on how I feel about that. I think both sides have made missteps throughout this over the last few years. I think it was a misstep to buy the land before under a previous team president that wasn't even the one that was going to be handling this. I think that was a mistake. I think flirting with the city of Chicago when that wasn't realistic for a year was a mistake. And I think the state ignoring this last year, and I understand their intentions in all this, I think that was a mistake. Now, I also wonder if there's mistakes being made right now. And I think that's a fair conversation to have about, the statement the Bears went out yesterday and how that was all handled. I'll let other people debate that right now. Right now, I also know that it's an admirable thing to ask. Right now, the governor is trying to put a cap on what the Bears can actually charge. They're worried about affordability for fans. That's admirable. I'm the guy who's constantly being like, hey, the White Sox need to lower concession prices. The Blackhawks and Bulls could probably benefit from that too. We need to make these games more affordable. I get all that. I also think it's a weird line to be trying to tell a private organization who owns the land and is going to own the stadium what they can actually charge for tickets and concessions. And that's certainly not what Indiana's doing right now. So is that a mistake that the state is making right now? I don't know. We're going to find out these things very soon. What I do know is that this is going to pass in Indiana next week, okay? And short of figuring out the land, which, don't get me wrong, is a big deal, and doing the due diligence on the actual land and eventually hopefully giving us some renderings and actually concrete evidence of a stadium and a spot where this thing can actually be built, so maybe it was slightly hyperbolic to say they're at the half-yard line. Semantics, 5-yard line, whatever you want to say. The point is the parameters of the deal with Indiana are almost done. They really are. Again, doesn't mean the Bears have to take that deal. Doesn't mean they will. I already raised my hand and said, I don't think they should. I think Arlington Heights is a better option. But that's all what's going on here. And so even though that's going to pass next week, Greg, and everybody watching this, doesn't mean that Illinois got to make a decision by next week, because they got to still figure out the land. That could take a couple months. And the Illinois session is still going to be going through May. What I do think is at this point, if not a soft deadline, a hard deadline, the Bears want to get a shovel in the ground somewhere this summer. Okay, so I would say timeline, next few months, very least by the end of May, based on the information I have right now. I know everybody's wondering that, so hopefully that clears things up. All right. We want to talk about Hammond. We want to talk about how realistic that is. You and I were both there. We got a chance to talk to the mayor yesterday. We will do all of that next. But first, hey, with the Bet365 early payout offered, you are a winner if your team goes up by 17 points with an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections marked as winners. Download the app. Use code CHGO365 when you sign up. And with basketball going on, NBA tip-off Tuesdays are on right now. And when the NHL comes back, they have an early payout offer too. You're a winner if your team gains a 3-goal lead. Again, Bet just becomes a winner at that point, regardless of what happens the rest of the way. So breaking news from Bet365. New customers now get $200 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up. Use code CHGO365, deposit 10, place a bet for $5 to get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it is never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, crisis counseling and referral services can be accessed by calling 1-800-GAMBLER in app only.
That's right. I want to give a shout out to our good friends over at Four Seasons. Don't be fooled. Winter is still around. It's not going to give up without putting up a fight. And that's why you got to make sure your home's heating is up for the challenge. And now is the time to schedule your Four Seasons furnace tune-up today. Thinking about a whole home generator? We have you covered with Four Seasons, because that is a game changer in any neighborhood. You know, the ones that have the generators, because when the power goes out, you're looking across the street and you're jealous of them. Don't be jealous anymore. Hit up Four Seasons for your generator needs. Save up to $4,000 on furnaces and comfort systems. And of course, they are your trusted local experts for heating, air conditioning, plumbing, sewer, and electric. They've been serving Chicagoland for over 50 years. That's fourseasonsheatingcooling.com, and hit them up for all their special offers and money-saving coupons. That's fourseasonsheatingcooling.com. Once again, your trusted local experts for heating, air conditioning, plumbing, sewer, and electric.
It's a really good job by Greg Braggs there. That was a great read.
Thank you.
It was. Yeah. Hey, couple business items here off the top. Want to let you know that we have a merch sale going on right now. 30% off store-wide, site-wide. It's a clear-out sale. It's happening right now. bunch of options there. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you can see on your screen.
I hate the White Sox, but that White Sox design is pretty good.
It's pretty good, right?
It's the old 80s kind of look. I like it.
Yeah, it's always the best one. There's an Iceman shirt on there. You got your Hogan Johns. I really like the new hockey ones that are out there. The hats are dope too. So all of that right now is a great time to get in, allchgo.com. And get your merch 30% off. I also want to shout out the Craigulator because he gifted another 20 CHGO Sports YouTube memberships, which is awesome. Appreciate the generosity. And our guy, the 3 Pepperonis, is in here with a super chat. $20 saying, my heart is aching, fellas. It just won't be the same. I know it's not over, but my heart is already growing cold. Thanks for being there for us.
My heart's growing cold with every comment from Kevin Fishbane from the chat. Don't piss me off before we get to the combine. All right, fish face. All right, let's just relax.
What's he saying?
He's trolling me. He's trolling me.
Well, at least he's in here in the comments and not just subtweeting us on Twitter. All right.
made me Google hackneyed. I didn't. We talked about the other day. I'm a wordsmith. But hackneyed, I had to Google that one.
Yeah, and then I had to have you explain it to me, which is even worse. So, hey, all right. You and I, let me say, you dragged me to Hammond, Indiana yesterday. All right, and
it's out of my way. So I just basically did this because I wanted you to feel what I feel every time I have to go home from training camp.
Oh yeah, I put it. We left that presser. I put it in my little GPS. How long is it going to take me to get home? And it was an hour and 44 minutes.
That's
and it
light.
Wasn't really
honestly,
rush hour yet.
Honestly, that's light to some of the summertime the traffic coming back from Vernon Hills to Northwest Indiana, and that's why Jenny will never understand. But that's why I just choose to play 18 holes and let the traffic clear. I'm being responsible.
Yeah, no objection here. I think it's a smart. Now on my end, it's harder for me to explain why I need to go play those holes with you. I'm sorry, honey. He's just lonely. I think if I let him go out there by himself, he needs a friend. So yeah, it's a little bit harder on my end. But anyway, yeah. So I'm trying to say this to where
I told you McDermott was a fireball, didn't I?
Yeah. He was. I like him. He's a fireball. And I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody that lives in the region at all. So please, nobody take this personally. But when you were talking earlier about
tread lightly here, Hoge.
I know. This is not about the people. This is not about the people. But I'm sure even you can admit that when you were talking earlier about how perfect the layout and everything seemed to be in Arlington Heights, it's a little bit of a different story when I'm going through the Skyway and then I'm checking my immediately getting notices about how my iPass account replenished so quickly because basically burned the whole thing on 2 tolls there. And the view coming over the bridge,
it's not great.
It's not exactly the same thing. I had never been in downtown Hammond before.
It's an older town.
Yeah, it's just a different experience. I will just say that. But beyond that, there were some red flags. I thought there were some red flags. And one of them was they're still not willing to talk about the specific location. Now, to be clear, when I'm seeing tweets, how do they not have a location? They have a location. They're just not telling us what it is yet. Okay. In fact, for the mayor to even talk, Mayor McDermott, to say that they have notified property owners. Now, that's a sort of a vague term. Are we talking about like residents, or are we talking about potentially that golf cart course you keep bringing up and showing us photos of? Like, we don't know, but property owners have apparently been notified of possible property acquisition. That's not something you do unless you're taking this pretty seriously. But then when I asked about the $2 billion commitment the Bears are willing to give, he didn't really have answers on what that's going towards. So there was just like him bringing up moving Hallis. Maybe that's just my own blind spot of not being willing to believe that, but they just doubled the size of Hallis like 5-6 years ago. I find it really hard to believe they're going to move the whole operation down there. So I walked out of there, Greg. I'm just being honest. Like there's a lot of, almost with more questions than answers, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I get that because, I mean, let's play a few different videos, but I mean, let's just start with the message to the Bears and Caleb. Because to me, like, one of the things that I think kind of got lost in the shuffle of the conversation yesterday is like, I hear, different, outlets saying, well, Indiana's acting like it's a done deal. Well, we go there yesterday. It sounds like he's still pitching to the, you know what I mean? So like even the mayor.
I'm glad you just brought that up just real quick, because that was, I thought, a very significant difference in tone compared to what the House committee meeting actually was in the morning. Because that actually was like they were talking like it was a done deal. And then you hear from the mayor in the afternoon, and you're right. I thought that was another red flag that it almost felt like he was begging them to come there.
So let's play these back to back here because he has one. I think we should start with the message to the Bears and Caleb because it's more of a fun thing. But then he has a more serious answer about why Hammond. And I think both these kind of lead to this conversation of where Thomas McDermott was still kind of pitching through this press conference to the Bears and why Hammond should be the pick.
What's my message to the Bears? Move to Hammond. Come over here, Kevin. Come over here, George. We're a great environment. I want to see Caleb Williams driving down Calumet Avenue, going to his house. Location. Let's start with that. All right. I think for the Bears, I can't speak for the Bears, but if I was running the Bears, I would want to be as close as possible to Soldier Field. But if you could be only 20 miles from Soldier Field and get all the amazing advantages Indiana offers to businesses, why wouldn't you be put your toe over the line, get all the business advantages that Indiana offers, and you're still a bike ride away from Soldier Field? I ride my bike to Soldier Field.
That's a hell of a bike ride.
Yeah. I mean, if this ends up happening, I think that just speaks to we need to do the bike ride. I can do it. It's about 17 miles, right? I once walked with David Kaplan from Navy Pier all the way to freaking past Evanston. So I'll gladly ride a bike.
Yeah, that was crazy that you guys did that, but it was for a great cause. So yeah, let's continue through this because I think some of the more significant things that came out of City Hall yesterday, talking to the mayor of Hammond, Indiana, Thomas McDermott, was, and again, Stephen, let's play these, kind of back to back the same way, but basically was asked, do you think this is strictly just a leverage play? And then he goes on to kind of illustrate, hey, if the Bears were to even match this offer, how could this potentially lay out, in his opinion on that? So let's start with, if he does believe this is just a leverage play.
Do you think some still feel that this could still be some type of leverage for the team to eventually pursue the deal in Arlington Heights? What are your thoughts on that?
Initially, this has been a process. I've been involved in this since the holidays. Okay, I'm not going to be specific, but I have to be honest with you. Early on, I was very skeptical. But anytime you have an amazing opportunity in economic development, you pursue. And we pursued. And there was one day when property owners were being notified by the state of Indiana that they wanted to acquire their property for this deal. That's when it started to get real for me. And I don't want to be specific, but there is going to be property acquisition involved in this process. And there's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure that's going to be involved in this. Hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure improvements to that area involved in this. But so when people were starting to be contacted by the state of Indiana, that's when I felt that it was real. And at the end of the day, if the Chicago Bears spend $10 million in Hammond and they end up saving $1 billion in Illinois, I can't control that. That was a good investment by the Bears. But if Illinois can match our deal, I don't know if they will. But let's say they match. Let's say we have $1 billion on the table and Illinois puts $1 billion on the table. I think 9 times out of 10 the Bears pick Indiana. Because we're a better business climate, and for the next 30 or 40 years, Indiana's going to be in a better position than Illinois. And I think the Bears, as any big business, are looking to save money. So I think they're going to choose Indiana, personally.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I think that's the part that I'm struggling to get fully on board. I get it from a simply, you want to put a spreadsheet up and tell me about how businesses are moving to Indiana because of the tax breaks and all that. Fine. But this isn't a corporation that's just trying to move, a car plant or, Amazon or whatever into like a certain amount of land and then do their business. And people just kind of go around them and, don't really pay attention. This is the Bears. Everybody's connected to the Bears. They're going to be a destination that people go to. People don't go to a car plant that move, or like, didn't John Deere just move? Wasn't the governor talking about that yesterday? How John Deere. So like, no one goes to John Deere to go like to an event. So right. I get like the money part of this, but what about the risk of hypothetically choosing Indiana, building there with the bet that both sides are making, the Bears and Indiana together, that it's really going to be this big boom for a region that clearly needs it? That would be great, by the way, if that happens. And all of a sudden that area ends up being great for the state of Indiana and great for the city of Chicago at the same time, and becomes a destination that, from living there right now, Greg, is not a destination. That would be great. But that's a pretty big idea. And we've seen these things fail many times before. And if they end up building a bad stadium and that doesn't take off in that area and it doesn't really become a destination, then it's just a colossal failure and everybody loses. And I guess you can make a similar argument for Arlington Heights, but wouldn't you agree that the risk is way lower? That place already was a destination for a long time. It was a horse track. And I get that it kind of started to flounder and eventually needed to be sold. But for a lot of years, and I say this from personal experience, having gone there with my family many, many times as somebody who lived in the city and would go out there on Mother's Day and other times during the summer to go to Arlington Park, there's way more proof in the pudding that it can and probably will work. So I get the money, but it seems way riskier to go to Indiana. So I don't necessarily agree when the mayor says 9 times out of 10, the two deals are equal, they're going to choose Indiana.
Well, I guess depends on, and I'm talking about us as, the opinionists, who you're shilling for, right? Because, there's a lot of people from Illinois, like, good, build the stadium in Indiana. We're still going to watch the Bears. Now you got to pay for it. Yeah. I got to be the one taxed on it. And we're not the ones that have to take the risk on how this is going to affect our long-term budget as a state. And so that's where I think the conversation is. And when Mayor McDermott talks about, why Indiana would be better, I think what he's pitching is not just the financial stability, but the political stability. Because he's saying, look, we just went and passed this 24-0 down in Indianapolis. That was Democrats and Republicans coming together to be on your side, Chicago Bears. And Illinois, they can't ever get along. They can't figure anything out. And how can you trust them over the next 40 years to not make to do right by you? Because we're already doing right by you. And so that's where I think some of there's financial risk, but there's also political risk down the road. And you can only have so many assurances. Once you're signed up, you're signed up. I think from a business standpoint, if all things were equal, yeah, you have an airport right down the street, O'Hare. I know Mayor McDermott was selling the Gary Airport. It's not exactly an airport. I know I didn't get to take you by the Gary Airport, but it's not like O'Hare. Okay. It's exactly what you would think as I kind of.
Are there even commercial flights out of there?
It's not it's like a side airport. Like there's like little planes there. Sure, can a private jet land there, or even a commercial one? They have a long enough runway.
I'm pretty sure the Blue Angels have used it before, like for the Chicago.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the best parts. Like when I was ring the bell or take a shot. I'm going to say when I was a bricklayer, but when the Air and Water show would go on, when we were working outside, all the Blue Angels, and when they do all these different things, they fly into Gary. So they'd come right over us every year, and we'd get to see that. And they park and station at Gary. And there's a lot of people that would hang out around the Gary International, or the Gary, not International, Gary Airport, and watch them take off and stuff. So, yeah, but it's not the same. Like it is so much more. The highway is right next to Arlington Heights. It's not a toll road that we don't know how much is going to cost. There's a train that goes right into Arlington Heights, right? Arlington downtown is beautiful. I was there with Carm, and we had a nice lunch. It's like there is a lot of opportunities there, but at the end of the day, the political climate and then what the financials are what's going to be what, decides this. And I think Mayor McDermott has a fair argument to say, you can trust us in Indiana from a political standpoint to not screw you over down the road.
Yeah. And I think you can. It's just, there's a lot of layers. By the way, for those wondering, that was a fake shot of espresso that I just did when he said take a shot. I know there was some confusion, including from Steven. This was espresso earlier. It even says espresso.
And I get people like the hardest part about these conversations, because it does have to do with the Bears' success on the field, is like we try to keep politics out of the CHGO Bears podcast, but that's not always possible, especially when you're talking about something like this, where politics and sports cross paths and have a direct correlation to one and the other. So I totally understand people's frustration here. And so I think a couple videos here to end this are, I had the opportunity to ask Mayor McDermott, because to me, again, I'm looking at this from a fan's perspective, and I understand the angst fans have about the idea of the Bears leaving Illinois to Indiana. So I just quite frankly asked him, what is your message to Bears fans?
This is obviously a huge opportunity for Northwest Indiana and their residents, but I'm curious, the fan side of it, Chicago Bears fans that may not have been expecting this to be a reality, what would you say to Bears fans that you have to reach your hand across and invite them over to our area?
We're closer. I think for a lot, if you're on the south side of Chicago, they should be applauding this move, because Arlington Heights isn't close to, and there's hundreds of thousands of Bears fans here in Northwest Indiana. I'm one of them. Yeah. Arlington Heights that's a haul. And I mean, it's discouraging to hear, to me, it's discouraging to hear the Bears are even considering Arlington Heights. I think if you're in downtown Chicago or on the south side of Chicago, they should be applauding this move, because we're going to be much closer to you, the fan, than if the Bears moved to Arlington Heights.
Yeah, I mean, that works both ways, though. I mean, I get it, but there's a lot of season ticket holders on the north suburbs too that get screwed. Either way, somebody's getting screwed. We've talked about that before, no matter what. And I actually think we've done a really good job of the show. Somebody who lives way north, and you live in Indiana, of not really making that cloud what we think should happen here. So, all right. I know we got to take a break. We're a little bit late for one. And we have a really good conversation with Taylor Dow still coming up to kind of shift the conversation away from the stadium and talk some Bears and talk about the coaching staff and some things that'll be a little bit a good way to go into next week with the combine coming up. So all that's coming up, but first. All right, men, are you starting to feel like you have lower energy throughout the day? Maybe you don't have the same motivation and drive. You're seeing that scale move up. Maybe the hair's falling out. Yep, these things all happen as we get older, and it might all be a result of low testosterone. This is very common as you get older. It's something to be mindful of. So I want you to check out Game Day Men's Health, because whether it's peak performance or becoming a better father, better husband, better man, Game Day Men's Health wants to support every man's health journey through personalized care tailored to your goals. It's a very quick and easy process. You can get in and out in an hour. I went and visited the Libertyville location, had a great experience. Yes, it's way more than just hip exfoliation, as Carm will tell you. Take a look at Josh. Our guy Josh here lost over 100 pounds in a little over a year using their testosterone replacement therapy. So start your best life with Game Day Men's Health. They have locations in Skokie, Naperville, Libertyville, plenty more. Park Ridge. Scan that QR code. You can find the location closest to you, or go to GameDayCHGO.com to find your
That's
location.
right. I definitely got to follow Josh's lead, and you got to follow my lead as I'm heading over to Old National Bank, because whether it's on the field or in your financial life, the best teams win by delivering excellence at every level. And at Old National Bank, they believe every play matters. From everyday checking to long-term planning and commercial banking, their team is here to build momentum and help you move the ball forward. It all starts with a plan tailored for you by professionals that you trust. From simple tasks to bigger financial moments, you can count on them to coordinate your needs with steady, knowledgeable guidance that brings clarity and confidence to each step. It's a partnership designed to help you feel supported, not just today, but well into your future. So whether you're celebrating a win, rebuilding after a tough loss, or gearing up for whatever comes next, they have your back with the right tools, insights, and an expert crew that's always in your corner. So hit up Old National Bank, member FDIC, where relationships and results matter.
All right. Quick little segment here before we get to Taylor Dow, because we do want to check it out here for a second with our friends at Old National Bank. This is Checking It Out, sponsored by Old National Bank. Every play matters, whether it's on the field or in your financial life. The best teams win by delivering excellence at every level. Old National Bank, where relationships and results matter. Member FDIC. And as the Bears try to deliver excellence at every level of their defense, there's been we just want to bring some rumors, at least one rumor here, to the forefront. This was from Connor Orr, Sports Illustrated, who made one bold prediction for every NFL team. By the way, his bold prediction for the Bears was that they're going to move to Hammond, Indiana. His bold prediction for the New Orleans Saints was that the Saints are going to trade Pete Werner to the Bears, saying with Chicago looking to move on from Tremaine Edmonds, the Bears will use a late-round pick to pair a Dennis Allen favorite with a defense in need of quality run support. I was in the Discord earlier and saw that some fans, including our guy Gary, not a fan of this move. I kind of like Pete Werner, to be honest with you. I don't know that I would trade a draft pick for him. It's been a little bit up and down at times, but the connection, of course, is to Dennis Allen, because he has been with the Saints since 2021. He was drafted by the Saints and previously played at Ohio State. So to answer your question, Greg, that's who Pete Werner is. And
I was more saying it tongue in cheek. I knew it would elicit a laugh, but he's like, let's talk about Pete Werner here. And I said, who the hell is Pete Werner?
Well, there you go. You want me to do the Karmapedia on him?
Yeah. I mean, that's where I know he's watching. He should have just dropped in like Sting from the rafters with a baseball bat to hit me over the head with the Pete Werner information. Like what's his aunt's name?
That would have been cool. Well, his father, Greg Werner, played college football at DePaul University. And was in the NFL with the Jets and Eagles. And his older brother, Dan, played college football at Harvard.
Okay.
How about that? I think it's smart to connect dots, though, with Dennis Allen guys, right? And connections there. The Bears did make a linebacker move yesterday, releasing Amen Agbangbamiga. I always mess up the first name instead of the last name.
I mean, you'd think it'd be a layup, but I think what it is you spend so much time focusing to make sure you get the last name right.
Right.
Then it throws you off. But yeah, and I could see them bringing back Amen, on like a 1-year deal. So just because they cut him doesn't mean. Now, that being said, when you talk about this trade idea, I could also see Tremaine Edmonds being cut. Right. So, how this is going to play out, over the next few weeks in terms of my only concern is, I understand from a cap standpoint why it would make sense to get rid of Tremaine Edmonds. But my concern is the Bears have enough things they got to figure out on defense too. They currently don't have any safeties, and so literally on the roster. So who is going to, how you're going to navigate through trying to figure out, Tyreek Stevenson, Deshaun Wright, and, CJ Gardner-Johnson, as he come back, all these corners, then you have no safeties. And obviously the forefront of everybody's mind is this defensive line. It's just, there's so much going on. Then you start to bring to me, how to make the linebacker room better, where I'm just like, I get it. And I would love for them to also bring back DeMarco Jackson personally. I think he's somebody that can come back on a cheaper deal. He didn't get enough looks the way Deshaun Wright did that he's going to be able to reset his market, I think, on, to other NFL teams. So I think DeMarco Jackson's probably the easiest solution to trying to make sure you're good to go at the linebacker spot next year.
Yeah, I agree, because I think Gary brought up a good point in the comments there. Like, they need, and I've been saying this nonstop, they need more speed. So bringing a slower linebacker in, not necessarily slower, but still not fast, right, is not necessarily solving the problem. So whereas I think DeMarco brings speed to the table, so I think I'd rather just re-sign DeMarco than give up a draft pick for Pete Werner. That's just kind of where I am on that. But I like connecting some of these dots. So, all right, Taylor Dowell's coming up next. I promise it's a good interview, and we're going to bring that to you after this. But first,
got to give a shout out to our friends and sponsors over at Huel. If you know anything about me, it is required that I have one protein shake every single day. It's been a part of my routine for quite a few years, and it is a game changer. You don't want to move away from your goals, and Huel is a perfect solution for high protein routine support, busy days, and convenience. They got 35 grams of protein, 27 essential vitamins and minerals, no artificial sweeteners, colors, and flavors. It's gluten-free. It's under $5 per meal. It's a complete meal. You can literally just grab and go. And again, it's under $5, way faster than meal prep, and it actually fills me up for hours. So if you're trying to stay consistent, this combo makes it stupidly easy. And for a limited time offer, get Huel today with our exclusive offer of 15% off online with our code BEARS15. That's new customers only. Thank you to Huel for partnering and supporting our show. That's Huel.com/Bears15. If you're busy, this is a game changer. And of course, the other game changer is our guy, Ray Scarpelli, and the good friends over at Ray Auto Chevy. New Chevrolet models are in store at Ray Chevrolet, and it's your chance to shop hot deals all month long during their auto show sales event. So stop in today and drive home with 0% financing for 72 months on all new Chevrolet models, or check out their selection of over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. With one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories, you're sure to find the perfect vehicle for you, as Mark Carman once did. Go see for yourself. Shop Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake on Route 12 or at raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's drive.
All right, let's bring in our friend Taylor Dowell, who hosts Helmets and Heels for 1010 down in Jacksonville, but also does a ton of Bears coverage and is dialed in on the Bears. And that's why we wanted to have you on with some Jacksonville, Chicago connections today that we need to discuss. How you doing, Taylor?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on again. It's always fun joining you guys. We talk a lot about you here in Jacksonville, actually, because I run our multimedia department, and the amount of times that I show videos of things that you guys do that I'm like, we could do something like this. Let's do this. So I appreciate all you guys do too. It's really fun.
Well, the last time I saw you, Taylor, we were at the corner of Wabash and Cermak getting ready for Bears Packers. So before we get into some of the stuff that we brought you on for, obviously this was a very magical season, and we cover the team, but we're also Bears fans.
Yeah.
We don't have to hide from that. And I know you had a pretty epic video in the stands after DJ Moore's touchdown. So just kind of wanted to hear your memories of that, looking back on this season and looking back on that game.
Yeah, it was really fun. The whole experience, anyways. The game was on my birthday, so it kind of ended up working out anyways, where as soon as the schedule came out, I was like, oh, Bears, Packers, and Chicago on my birthday. This couldn't get any more perfect. And it did because they won. So that added on to it. And then I ended up winning tickets from Javon Dexter on Twitter. So it just everything kind of pieced together for that game, but it was so much fun. I mean, there was a moment, obviously, when you're down and the Bears had only scored 6 at that point. I was freezing personally. I live in Florida and I've been in Florida for a long time. So I'm standing there and I look at my cousin and I was like, if I came up here to watch the Bears score 6 points and lose, I'm going to be so upset. And I mean, probably a minute later is when Janae Walker got that touchdown and we looked at each other and I was like, okay, maybe so another miracle happens, and it did. But I don't know if I have ever experienced anything like that. And like being a Cubs fan, I went up to Chicago for Game 5, 3, 4, 5. I was up there Game 5 at Wrigley, and so I feel like you have these experiences, and that's kind of what reminds you why you love the team and why you love that sport. And that was one of those realization moments where I was like, this is something that I'll be able to talk about forever. And so, yeah, it was iconic. There was somebody in front of me, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, 2 beers together. So there's like beers flying. We're all standing up on our chairs. Like it was incredible.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
great.
there's still, looking back on it, so many incredible memories from last season that, we gotta, as much as everybody wants.
It's too good of a season to move on from. Like,
Yeah.
we're supposed to look to next year, but like the players and the coaches can do that. We can still remedy. Like it was too
Right.
special of a season. I was just telling somebody yesterday, like most special seasons have 2 of those games.
Mhm.
They had 8 of those games. That
Yeah.
never happens.
Right. So anyway, tell us about Press Taylor.
Yeah. There's press. So I'll go back and we'll go back to the 2022 season because I do want to start with some of the positives before I get into some of the concerns that I have. But you go back to 2022 and it was a weird season for the Jags. There were not a lot of expectations going into that. Obviously the year before it was Urban Meyer and that was just a complete disaster, and everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong with Urban Meyer and that Jags team. So you get into 2022 and there's kind of this, okay, what exactly is going to happen? Nobody really knew. The Jags ended up winning 6 of their 7 games at the end, get into the postseason. I know most people probably remember they have that game against the Chargers where they're down. I'm trying to even remember. It was like 27-7 or something like that. And then Jags come back and Trevor Lawrence brings them back into the game. They end up beating the Chargers in the first round of the postseason. And so after that season, a lot of conversation was had of who was play calling. Was it Doug Peterson? Was it Press Taylor? And so there was a lot of back and forth from that. What we ended up hearing, and I don't know, this is just kind of reports that surfaced after that, was that Doug Peterson was play calling for the first half of games and Press Taylor was play calling for the second half of games. And the second half of games is when they had all these comebacks. It was kind of Bears-esque in that season where they were losing a lot in the first half and then they'd come back and they'd win, whether it was like a miracle interception against Dallas and then ended up going down and scoring and winning, or that Chargers game. So there was a lot of moments in that where we were like, oh, okay, well, Press Taylor kind of got a lot of these games and kind of reeled Trevor Lawrence in, because Trevor Lawrence also has been a roller coaster since he's got here too. This is probably the best season we've had of him. And so you were still trying to see what Trevor was. And down that final stretch, you really did start having hope, like, okay, this is this generational talent that everybody told you were getting out of Trevor Lawrence. And Press Taylor kind of reeled that out of him in second half of games down that stretch in 2022. And then so you go on and like the offseason happens and things just start getting messy. I don't quite know what happens. And we kind of have this tale here where we would joke like Press Taylor got Doug Peterson fired twice. That's kind of the sentiment that is said around here, because they would never after that be honest. It was always like, who's play calling? And Doug would be like, well, we're not going to officially say who's play calling. And it was this weird secret, like gatekeeping for no reason. And nobody
never a good thing.
Yeah.
I've learned that whenever you don't know who's calling things and whose offense you're really running, it's not a good thing.
No. And it just got uncomfortable because then reporters are asking Trevor, and Trevor was like, I don't know. Whoever's calling, I'm ready to, run their offense, whatever the case may be. So it was putting Trevor in weird situations. The coaching staff, all of us just felt like we were just being lied to at this point. Cause it's like, I don't understand why you just don't want to say, hey, Press is calling plays, which it does. From other reports since then, it does seem like Press Taylor was the one play calling, and Doug, for whatever reason, didn't ever really want to say that. And they wanted to keep it a secret. I don't know why. But you get into that 2023 season and things just kind of started to spiral. And in that sense, it's all those secrets, which doesn't help. But in addition to that, you just kind of started seeing Trevor regress in a lot of areas. His footwork started getting kind of messed up. He was overthrowing a lot, sailing a lot of passes. It was kind of the anticipation that you started seeing at the end of 2022 started lacking a little bit. He was running away from phantom pressures. Granted, there's a lot of things that tie into this. And you guys know, watching a lot of Bears football, there's other factors into what can make a quarterback successful and unsuccessful. And so there were a lot of things. The line wasn't really good. He was getting hit a lot. He was battling a ton of injuries during the time. He had, ankle and arm and ribs and everything you can think of within the last couple months of that 2023 season. He played through all of them, but he wasn't practicing every single week. It was like limited or did not practice. Then he'd play on Sunday and you're like, well, no wonder he's not playing really well. He hasn't practiced all week. And so there was this discussion of how much was it Press and Doug or whoever's calling plays, and how much was it just that Trevor was banged up and the line was bad and they couldn't run the ball. And so all of those things kind of factored into a lot of the stuff in 2023. And in 2024, it just got worse at that point. You saw Trevor to the point where people were like, okay, well, does Trevor need to be traded? Do you try and figure something out and go get a new quarterback? Because this just doesn't look like the quarterback that's going to save the franchise that we were talking about being this generational elite talent. And so a lot of things kind of started to regress at that point. And they already paid Trevor after that 2022 season. So you were kind of locked into that big contract with him. And so there was just a lot of factors there. But the hard part to even say is because we've never been told, like, Press Taylor was calling plays, or Press Taylor was specifically working on this, some of these fundamentals or mechanics with Trevor. They were just so secretive about whether it was Press or Doug in a lot of senses. And that's kind of, it's hard to determine what really it was. And one of the big things for me this last year, when Liam Cohen comes here and Grant Udinski, they immediately, the first thing they talked to Trevor Lawrence about was like, hey, we're switching your feet. We need to switch your feet around. We need to flip your hips. I don't know why you've been throwing this way your whole career. And a lot of it, I think, is Trevor's just, the embodiment of what a quarterback should look like. And he has an arm, and like, it's always been kind of easy. So no one, I feel like, felt like they needed to correct anything because he just won a lot of football games in high school and college. And then it kind of caught up to him in the NFL. And so that's one of my things too, is why didn't Press Taylor or Doug Peterson, like quarterback guys, a former quarterback, and then Press Taylor working with him, didn't ever comment on that. And that's one of the first things Liam said. So I don't know. It's a weird control thing with Doug Peterson and Press. I don't know if we'll ever truly know what that dynamic looked like in Jacksonville, or how much was who, if it was 50-50, if it was what. But that's some of my concerns, just because I saw the regression of Trevor. It's just hard to pinpoint if it was Press or what else was going on.
Well, obviously, it's kind of a big mark for Press Taylor that Ben Johnson was willing to bring him onto his staff last year, right, as a passing game coordinator. Now he gets into the offensive coordinator role, but as we know, Ben Johnson calls the plays. So just curious from your perspective and kind of what we've learned here in the last couple months through different reporting of exactly what Declan Doyle's role was here in Chicago. And now you try to look at Press Taylor and see how he can join and jump into that role. How confident are you that will be a seamless transition? Because obviously the Bears had a fantastic season, and we're obviously looking for bigger and better and trying to get to a Super Bowl.
Yeah. And that's what, with all of the negative things I just said, I'll start with, like, I think this is fine. And part of that is because, number one, I trust Ben Johnson. I think we've seen that Ben Johnson's hirings he's nailed it. You lose a couple this year, you get poached already for your coaching staff that you've built. And so I trust him. And I also trust Caleb. And I'm sure, I don't know specifically, but I'm guessing Caleb should, or hopefully was in on some of those conversations. And we've heard some of the madness of the year before with Waldron and how vocal he was about that not working. So to me, I feel like if they were confident enough to pull Press Taylor and make him the offensive coordinator, then conversations between Ben and Caleb had to have been had of what they think is best for this offense. And so that's part of it too. You talk about one of the comments that Cole Kmet, I think it was, made about the Declan Doyle was a big part of those halftime adjustments and some of the adjustment end game adjustments. And that's one of the things I just mentioned. We talked about Press Taylor actually being, that if that all the reports were true, being good at in Jacksonville is those halftime adjustments and game adjustments. And they started winning a lot of football games. So if you want the guy that you feel confident can come in and kind of take that role over, I think it will work. And I think Ben Johnson, he's a control freak. We know that. We see everything, and his perfectionist side kind of really gets out. It's a little crazy. I was looking at the playoffs, by the way. We went for the fourth down 12 times in the postseason. I was like, that's absolutely insane. But it gets a little wonky sometimes, but I trust Ben. And I think at the end of the day, that's where we have to be right now, because it doesn't feel like he's made any bad choice when it comes to the coaching staff. And obviously Jags and Bears kind of swapped, Shane Waldron being in Jacksonville, being the passing game coordinator. You kind of hear similar things here, that the work he's done with Trevor complimented Shane Waldron a lot. So sometimes maybe it's just the place. You need the dynamic between head coach and offensive coordinator has to click, and the quarterback has to be right, and all of those things. And so I'm just hoping that that's what we're looking at right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that makes sense. First of all, Press Taylor was in the building last year. So the fact that Ben is promoting him, whether we know exactly what Declan Doyle's role was, they both know what that role was. And Ben obviously feels comfortable that Press can do it. And I also think that because of, regardless, the play calling and all this is kind of irrelevant because he's not going to have to do it. However, him being an offensive coordinator, an experienced offensive coordinator, whether it went well or not, being able to get in front of the room, he led offensive meetings. We did learn as you referenced, in San Francisco from Cole Kmet, that on Fridays and the Saturday walkthroughs, Declan Doyle took that over and was kind of leading those so that Ben can work on other things he needed to work on to get ahead for the game on Sunday. So, we kind of knowing that, it sounds like you feel confident that Press Taylor is going to be able to step into that role. And obviously Ben is confident. Otherwise he wouldn't have promoted him.
Yeah. And that's why I got tagged so many times from Jaguars fans of like, have fun with this. And I'm like, everybody just relax a little bit. And I think at the end of the day, I keep saying that, just trust Ben Johnson, because he hasn't done anything, especially with the staff he's built, to show us that we should have any hesitation, and the people he has, he's confident in being able to lead this. And I think the most important thing is just that relationship between Caleb. And also, you don't want Caleb to have to go through coaching staffs and different guys constantly. So it kind of works that he was in the building. He was already working closely as that passing game coordinator. So you kind of have that comfortability still, rather than having another new offensive coordinator, even if he's not calling plays, working with your quarterback and trying to change things that maybe that had already been adjusted and were working last year.
Maybe I'm reaching a little bit here, but just from a simple math standpoint, they lost 2 coaches, in the running back coach and the offensive coordinator, but they added 4 coaches. So I don't know if this speaks to what Declan Doyle was doing for this team, but it's simple math. And we talked about it. Press Taylor is the offensive coordinator. Isaiah Ford, former wide receiver, offensive quality control coach. And then Will Lawing is an offensive analyst. I know you had a chance to talk to Bill O'Brien, with your work you do on Windy City Gridiron. And it was a fantastic interview for any of you that haven't had a chance to go check that out, to kind of get an understanding of who Will Lawing is. But, after you kind of did your research and had that interview, and now we see exactly, because at the time we still didn't know what his role would be on this team. Now we know it's offensive analyst. I, for one, thought maybe he could be, after watching that interview, I was like, maybe he's the offensive coordinator for this team. So from your perspective and everything you've been doing behind the scenes, like, how do you see Will Lawing fitting into this picture as well?
Yeah, one of the things that Bill O'Brien shared with me, Coach O'Brien, when I talked to him was, number one, they've been together for like 13 years. So they were together at Boston College most recently, which is where he came from. But they were together in Houston. They were together in New England. They had many stops. And so one of the things he shared with me is all of the different things that Will Lawing has done on coaching staffs when it comes to being most recently an offensive coordinator. But he's worked with tight ends, he's worked with wide receivers, he's worked with quarterbacks. He even had a year or two where he was on the defensive side of the ball and helped some of the defensive pieces. So I think just the angle when it comes to somebody like that, being able to add so many elements and experience, and so both college level and pro level, working with different types of quarterbacks. He also mentioned that, when Castellanos was the quarterback at Boston College before he went to Florida State, he's a mobile quarterback, uses his legs, does a lot of stuff out of the pocket. So he talked about his familiarity and being able to work with a quarterback like that and how he thinks it would work well with Caleb Williams. So all those things, to me, I agree. I kind of had this moment where I was like, oh, maybe this is kind of what they're seeing as they're testing the waters to see if this is who they want to be their offensive coordinator. Obviously that didn't happen, but I do think somebody like this fits well with Caleb. I think fits well in this type of offense, has a lot of experience in just every side of the offense. But then you can also kind of have that unique view of have coaching a defense too, and kind of teach Caleb through the eyes of that side of things at times. So I think it'll work. I mean, you add all these pieces. There's clearly something there that they felt they wanted. They needed some more hands-on, maybe guys that can do specific things that maybe Declan Doyle was doing more than what we know. But I think it'll work. I think that this combination of guys, Isaiah Ford also, he's from Jacksonville. He went to one of the high schools here, Trinity Christian. So a lot of people in this town are familiar with him too. And he's super bright mind too. That's what everybody talks about him when it just comes to the way he sees the field and the way that he can coach it. He hasn't coached yet, but he'd come back to Jacksonville and go back to Trinity and help at times. So I think it's a good staff. And I feel like I love what Ben Johnson's done both years. I feel like he's kind of instilled confidence in that light. And that's what you kind of want out of your head coach, is being able to actually trust and hope that they can do the right thing and not feel like things will fall apart because you lose a couple guys that get poached.
So since you are, so close to the Trevor Lawrence stuff and all this too, I'm curious just your perspective on following Caleb and following Trevor Lawrence, obviously different parts of their careers, but both number one overall picks. And, I think I reached a point in some point last season, probably in the middle of the season, where I was like, look, I think the floor for Caleb right now is to be in a Trevor-like situation where he already got his second contract, but, it's a constant discussion down there. It seems like, well, is this guy really, the long-term answer or anything? Like, I felt like that was the floor. And now we're sitting here after the playoffs, and I think Caleb's already surpassed Trevor. So but that's our view here from Chicago. So you're way closer to the Trevor Lawrence situation. How do you view essentially what I just said there and trying to, stack them?
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence has been, we always say he's just been inconsistent, very consistently inconsistent is what we say. But when he's good, he's really good. And that's what's kind of been frustrating, because you have these moments, which we saw from Caleb last year, those moments where you're like, man, there's something there, but can you pull it all together? Can you kind of stop making some of the errors that you need to? And a lot of factors in this. We know Caleb was sacked almost 70 times last year and he couldn't run the ball, and there's all those things. And Trevor's dealt with that. Trevor's dealt with back-to-back seasons with injuries where he was missing portions of time. And so it's always been hard to fully evaluate. And that's what's been most frustrating, is I feel like at the end of every offseason, we were like, well, we don't know still. Like at the end of last year, we don't know, like, is Trevor going to be the future? And we almost started to accept the fact that, like, he's going to be really good at times, and you're just going to have to deal with having some bad games. You're going to have to deal with the turnovers. He had fumbling issues. He, in those 4 years, led the league in turnovers, and this year drastically changed that. But you just kind of started to accept that. Even up to probably week 7 or 8 this year, we were having conversations on air of being like, I mean, I guess this is just who he is. We're going to have to accept the fact that sometimes he's going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs and beat the Niners on the road. And then sometimes you're barely going to win a game against the Oakland Raiders because he throws a pick. And so you kind of started to accept that. And then he had the stretch of games at the end, especially probably the last 5 games, where he was just playing incredible football. And he looked like he was fully in control at the line of scrimmage. He was they put the wristband on. That's one thing that we noticed. So they gave him the wristband back in like week 8 or 9. And that's when things kind of started to shift. We joke about it where we're like, all right, like Trevor, wristband or no wristband, whatever that may be, it changed. And I don't know if he just started becoming more comfortable in the offense. They obviously traded for Jacoby Myers, and that kind of was just a little like puzzle piece that felt missing. But he looked so much more comfortable. It looked like his offense. And so with all that being said, we still have the conversations of, okay, well, he's done this in half a season's, at the end of 2022, at the beginning of 2023, and now at the end of 2025, but he's never put it all together for a full season. And that's the next step. Can he do that? Can he be a quarterback from week 1 to 18 and into the postseason that is somebody you can trust in and you want to lead your offense and have faith that in moments when you're down, he can pull you back out of it. That's what we have to see next year. You saw it in that final 5-6 game stretch, but now you got to see it for a full season. And I think with Caleb, it's more that, but kind of zoomed in. Can you do that for a full game? And that's what you don't want to keep having these games where it's like, okay, he can come back from the fourth quarter. You'd like some leads. You'd like them to score points sooner. And I saw Caleb on the Max Crosby podcast mentioned that, we got to get the ball rolling a little quicker in these games and score points. And he talked about that Peyton Manning record. And so I think that that's something we know. Caleb has goals. We know Ben Johnson has goals. And you have this whole off season now with these guys, with Luther Burden and Colston Loveland. And so this offense, it's just hard to me to not think that everything doesn't look even better next year and at a more consistent rate for Caleb.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to score 60 touchdowns. It's going to be the greatest year of our lives. My final thing, and obviously you drew the Caleb and Trevor kind of comparisons. And I feel like, I think it's your fault that Jacksonville and Chicago have such a symmetry. Like I would never draw these connections, but every time I do, I think of you. And so I just have to assume that if you did not exist, I would not constantly be thinking about how alike the Jags and the Bears are, or at least the comparing contrast of these two organizations. Because even last year where both teams felt like they were trying to get Ben Johnson, then both teams, have this great, reclamation year with a head coach that's offensive minded, Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson. I think there's some comparisons there we could have gotten into, but I want to skip to ownership. Obviously everything in Chicago yesterday, the whole city, goes up for grabs because of the stadium news. There's obviously, a stadium you guys in Jacksonville are dealing with stadium news as well. Next year, you guys are going to a limited capacity. The year after that, it's going to be a completely different stadium while you guys built this state-of-the-art, $1.5 billion stadium, right? So I'm just curious from your perspective of covering both teams and the difference between how they've gone about trying to build their stadiums, and obviously the big difference between ownership of George McCaskey and Shad Khan in Jacksonville when you talk about people that are cash rich versus people that are trying to, get the state to help them pay for things.
Yeah, and it wasn't easy here. It was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of, the proposal would come up and then the city would say no. And it'd be like, okay, it's going to be 50-40 split. Shad Khan this much and the taxpayers this much. And it was so back and forth for a while where it honestly felt like it wasn't going to happen. And then finally Shad Khan was like, okay, I'll pay half of this. And that's the benefit of having a multi-billionaire who he also has this isn't his, like the Jags are his baby in a sense, but he also owns a whole other company and a soccer team and all of these other things that he's getting money from.
He's got a giant boat.
Yeah, a massive yacht that he upgrades like every 2 years. And so I think that is a big part of it. I mean, Shad Khan was willing to just be like, all right, we need to get this done. So I'm going to fork out a large portion of this money to get the stadium done. Obviously there's the conversation, Florida property taxes and taxes in general and everything is not nearly what you have to deal with in Illinois. So that factors in that you don't have to deal, I think, as much with those little intricate things. The downtown needed it though. And I think that's one of the things that Shad Khan really wanted to focus on because Chicago is beautiful. Downtown Chicago, there's a million things to do. You could go every single weekend and still not touch every restaurant and bar that is in downtown Chicago. And so it's Jacksonville downtown's not like that. And I think that Shad Khan saw, okay, well, if I invest in a stadium, that is investing in the city and downtown, and that's going to bring concerts and hopefully a Super Bowl. Again, that was a disaster last time, but all of these things, they want to build kind of facilities around it, and that's adding jobs, and they're building a Four Seasons now on the river. And so there's all these things that I think Shad Khan was like, okay, well, I'm investing in a stadium, but I'm investing in a lot more beyond that. And that's what he is. He's a businessman. He loves his companies. He likes spending his money and making money. And I think that was a large part of it. I think the Jags did it right in the sense of we'll be limited capacity next year, probably play in Orlando for a year, and then come back and your stadium's done and you're good to go. It's also very hot at games. And so they knew they needed some sort of indoor or shading or something because fans didn't want to go in September. It was just miserable. And so that's some of the things. If you want butts and seats, then make it more comfortable and make fans want to be there and make it a full day experience rather than just like, hey, let's go watch the Jags when it's 105 degrees outside.
Yeah. Oh, we're so sorry. It's so warm and hot there when it's 9 degrees for the Bears playoff game.
Yeah.
Taylor, you're the best. Thank you so much for joining us. Fun talking to a lot of these Jaguars Bears connections. Always good having you on. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, Taylor's a good friend of the show, and enjoyed the insight there from her on the coaches. And
yeah, I genuinely, when we came back from this, I was thinking about like, because we miss Mark so much, and we look forward to bringing him back next week. But it's like typically when we come back from a long video like that, like he's doing the sleeping. I know Steven has the picture. It's like he's got the. But then, yeah, exactly. I don't want to
remember Pat filled in pretty well for him the other day.
That's true. That's true. Steven said eyes up, and Pat did the exact opposite.
Yeah, he was just being what's the word? Defiant. Is what he did it on purpose, I think. All right. Hey, on our way out here, we got some super chats. I want to make another mention of our merch sale going into the weekend. 30% off the entire store right now. So check it out. Go to allchgo.com, hit that merch button, and you will see all of our merch. Lots of great stuff in there. 30% off. Good way to go into the weekend with some new CHGO merchandise. Appreciate all the support. Do want to get in these super chats here on the way out. Kate's dog Logan became a YouTube member. Shout out to Kate's dog. Shout out to Logan. And Jesse with a $2 super chat. Biggest rival, Packers or Indiana Bears?
Come on now. Come on, Jesse. I live in Indiana. I'm a Bears fan. What are we doing?
Let's go. 1-0.
Don't turn on the region over all of this, okay? We didn't do anything. Well, we kind of are doing something. Trying to take the Bears.
Yeah, you guys are doing a lot.
I said this morning on Twitter, I go, moving the Bears to Indiana is like moving the Sears Tower to Indiana.
Kind of is. Jonathan Naughton, $5. Our guy, Bears are moving to Indiana because they respect the rule of dibs. It is a well-known fact that I called dibs weeks ago on cul-de-sac parking.
Yeah,
it out.
That's true.
That's a good point. And then Louis, $5. If Daly was mayor, is there any question the Bears would be staying in Chicago with the whole Bears world around it? Taxpayers paying also. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, if you really want to go back, I mean, the blame, since that was our headline on this, was, I mean, this goes back years and decades, and there's a lot of blame. A lot of different areas. I just hope they figure it all out. And more importantly, regardless of where it all ends up, I just hope that 10 years from now, nobody's regretting it. That's what I'm scared of. What does the stadium actually look like? Where is it? Is it working? And are we already talking about how much of a problem it is? Because, I mean, that's kind of what happens in San Francisco right now with Santa Clara. And we were just there with that whole stadium situation and how far it is. But I'm sure we'll talk more about it next week. I'm going to go watch USA. Hopefully beat Slovakia. It's been a fun, crazy week. Appreciate everybody tuning in, watching, listening. Please hit that like button on the way out. Subscribe to the CHGO channel. We always appreciate your support, and rate and review the pod as well. Greg, any final thoughts going into the weekend?
None whatsoever. I got Motor Music. Well, actually, now that I start talking, I do have final thoughts. Motor Music Mike is in town. Steven and I went to Bavette's with him the other day. Hoge was very mad at us because we didn't give him a formal invitation. I did mention to him that we were going to hang out, so I don't really feel like I'm to blame here. We didn't know we were going to Bavette's, just so we're clear, Hoge. Like,
that's fair.
We had like a very floating, like, hey, I got to do the Rank podcast, and after that, we'll figure it out. And then chose to go to like the most expensive restaurant in Chicago. So, but
Probably good
beyond
way to
that,
go.
he's still in town, and he's actually on his way to my house right now, and we are going to the Purdue IU game here in a little bit. He's an IU fan. Nobody's perfect. I once wasn't perfect. If you want to dial up that joke, go right ahead. Yeah. So we're
going to
heading
try to convert him to a Purdue fan today.
You know, I think he might see the light when he goes to Mackey Arena. So we're gonna be, me and Motor Music Mike will be at Mackey for the game. So if you see us and you're there, say hi, and looking forward to that. And so yeah, that's it. That's my only final thoughts is boiler up. And if they lose to IU again, I'm never talking to Gary ever again.
Wow. A lot on the line here tonight. All right. Like I said, I'm going to go watch USA and Slovakia. Cubs are actually playing the White Sox right now, too. So the Sox already won 1-0. That's going to be our only bragging rights moment of the entire season, I'm sure. So anyway, enjoy your weekend, everybody. We're going to talk to you next week from Indianapolis. Cannot wait. One of our favorite weeks of the year. Again, hit that like button on the way out. Hit subscribe. And we will talk to you next week.
We all silly like the mayor.